So I have here Rationality Rules, also known as Steve Woodford. Thank you for coming on. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? You have a YouTube channel, right?
I do have a YouTube channel, but first and foremost, thank you very much for having me on. I really do appreciate it. I run the YouTube channel called Rationality Rules, and basically the channel is about critiquing and debunking religious arguments, but I also do on occasion expand out to any kind of pseudoscience, such as, what do you call it, vaccines causing autism, or sometimes I have a bit of fun with flat earthers, etc. But essentially it's one of those almost cliche kind of channels in that sense. But it's good fun, and I'm glad to see that there's an audience for it.
Yeah, I absolutely love the name Rationality Rules because you talk a lot about logical fallacies, so it's kind of it's got a double meaning to it. Like rationality rules, you absolutely love rationality, but also the rules of rationality, right? How did you come up with that name?
So there is two stories. One of them is a little bit more romantic. The other one is a little bit more, well, that just happened. Which would you prefer?
The romantic one. Give me the romantic one first.
So the romantic answer is that when I was young, I realized that you needed to essentially understand the world around you in order to get towards your goals. I think this is something that everyone pretty much recognizes. But one thing I realized while I was young is that if you don't actually have the right pieces, so if you don't actually have the right facts, you won't get to the conclusions that you're trying to get to. Or if you do, it will be because of luck. And what I found interesting in my research is that when you're doing that, you're still acting rationally because you're acting according to the evidence that you have. And I found that very peculiar. And what I realized as I learned more, particularly about David Hume and other people like him who really do question the foundations of all we know, particularly his problem of induction, is that ultimately everyone is acting rationally according, not always, but most people who participate in like science and reason and rationality, logic, philosophy, they are all acting rationally according to the facts as they understand them or as they interpret them, and yet they could all be wrong. I think one of the best examples is with Newtonian physics. Everyone thought, that's that, it's done. Part of why we call it laws is because of that, Newtonian laws. Not entirely, but partly. And then we realized that that's just not the case. Our presuppositions, even though they're not presuppositions, our evidence was wrong. And yet we were still rational to have those views. So long story short, what I'm saying is that I've realized that for everyone, whether they realize it or not, it is pretty much rationality rules.
Usually when I come into a conversation or an argument or a discussion of any sort, I have to kind of enter the discussion understanding that there is a possibility that I'm wrong. Of course, everything that I believe right now, I believe to be correct. Obviously, that's how it is for everybody. But I feel like we have to enter conversations understanding that that possibility is there. And that largely dictates how I treat interlocutors when discussing anything with them. Do you think that kind of informs your approach toward conversations or anything like that?
Absolutely. The switch, I think most people go through it, and the people that don't are normally insufferable. And that is when people have been proven wrong on things that they otherwise thought were absolutely the case, they get embarrassed. I did, I'm sure you did, others do. And it means that the next time that you're so sure, you don't necessarily come out so aggressive, so cocksure of yourself. You anticipate that maybe someone knows something that you don't. And yeah, I think it's one, it's an incredibly important thing, but two, yes, it's definitely something I practice. And I'm always reminded when anyone else mentions it, or I remind myself by the way in which Hitchens put it. And it was essentially, I can only paraphrase it, I can't remember it by quote, the more you know how little you know. And it's almost frustrating because you paradoxically can become less confident in your worldview. And then you're leaving the politics to the people who are cocksure, who are quite honestly idiots if they get to an adulthood and they still act as if they hold the truth themselves. So it's very problematic in that sense as well.
When I was a smaller YouTuber, I think I've been doing this for about 3 years now, or almost 3 years. I remember hearing your name in the context of this YouTuber got his channel deleted at like 30,000 subscribers and then built it from the ground up. What happened with that?
Oh man, yeah, I got a lot of people going, so Rationality Rules, huh? Is that what you call yourself? And that happens. The reason why they said that is that was totally my fault. I severely screwed up. So in order to build Rationality Rules, I had to work on top of a full-time career as a graphic designer. And that was great fun. I think that's the same for most YouTubers that are so fortunate as myself to eventually be able to do this full time. And my gosh, is it amazing when it can occur. And I'm very fortunate for having it. Thank you to my patrons and all the rest of them, ad revenue. But yeah, I had to work essentially 90-hour weeks in order to get that off the ground. And some of the mistakes I made because I was tired, I came back and hit me hard. One of which was that I put my YouTube account according to so the YouTube channel was part of the Google account that was associated with my job. And when I left, they deleted the Google account. And what happens is it also deletes the YouTube account. So bam, gone, completely gone. My fault, but I lost it all. And I contacted YouTube, and it was pretty damn devastating. But as with most things that are devastating, it eventually becomes a joke. So last time I was hanging out with Alex O'Connor, I think we were having pizza. I said, I'll go get the pizza. And he said to me, no, don't you go. You'll delete the cooker or something. I'm like, you motherfucker. But yeah, yeah, it's that's the story on that.
I feel like the things that you add to the community are of great value. So, like I said, glad that you're here and you took the time to rebuild it, because I know something like that can be pretty devastating, and a lot of people would have just walked away from it completely.
I got a lot of people having my back. Alex, for example, shouted me out. He felt bad for me. Hemant Mehta helped me out as he did the first time. I think Hemant Mehta is, to some extent, an unsung hero. He for lots of us, I don't know if you are included, but for lots of us, he shared our content when we were smaller channels and really gave us the first kick. I remember getting the first 100 subscribers and paying, arduous attention to every comment. It's only after a while that you realise that you don't have to pay attention to every single comment, especially if it's about things such as your wall behind you or whatever it might be, your cadence. But some things, of course, are worth hearing.
Yeah, I actually remember going through my comments, and I answered every single comment, or at least read every single comment up to 50,000 subscribers, and at that point, it was just literally impossible.
I would say that's quite impressive. By about 30,000, I just couldn't keep up. Which is amazing. How cool is that as an experience? It's like I just can't keep up. But yeah, it's difficult. I know that some YouTubers then get other people to watch so that they can, essentially do some kind of vetting of the comments. But I've always just thought people can say what they want. Other people will destroy them if they say stupid stuff.
That's pretty much how it's been for me, honestly. I don't delete any comments or anything unless they have links. If they have links in them, then YouTube will send them to spam anyways, and I just delete it. It's no big thing. But switching gears, why don't you tell me a little bit about like your childhood growing up in religion? Were you religious growing up, or were you kind of an atheist? Were your parents atheists? What's the deal?
Yeah, sure. So I had a rough upbringing. My mother is an alcoholic, and my father was away on the oil rig a lot. And so I bounced around. It's not technically foster care, but it essentially is. I bounced around in a lot of care. And so it was really turbulent. So one, I was trying to find stability in that sense. And two, I was trying to find stability very young, psychologically, spiritually, as some might put it, even though that would be a terrible way to put it. What I found was I didn't actually become religious at all. I went to a Catholic school. We prayed every single day in schools. I think that was pretty much across the board in the UK. There may have been a few schools where that didn't happen, but yeah, singing all of the God's praises and all the rest of it. But never have I been a Christian. I just don't feel comfortable with ever saying that I was, because I wasn't. I used Christian terms, angels, etc., because that is the culture that I'm part of. But I was never a Christian. I will say that I was definitely a believer in a God. But it wasn't until, I think it was about 7, I went up to the local vicar, which was part of the school. So the school had this building, well, it was a church, kind of a church, and it had a vicar in there which we could all talk to at any point. I remember going to him and essentially at the age of 7 giving him the problem of evil, and I essentially said that my sister, this isn't correct, but my mother had told me it. My sister had died. She had died, but it's hard to explain. She was only, my mum was pregnant with what would have been my sister, but it was only 2 months. But my mum saw it as a baby, so she told me it was a baby, and therefore I was like, wow, I've lost a sister. So I said to the vicar, I've lost a sister. How do you, why would God do this? And essentially I was saying that she's innocent. Why would an all-powerful, all-loving God enact this? Which, you know, as an adult, I can now see that I'm basically echoing Epicurus, whence cometh evil.
And how old were you at this point?
7. I was 7. Yeah, so I'm impressed with myself for that one. So yeah, I asked that question, and he just gave me what they always do, and that is, God is mysterious, we don't know, God is love, you know, all of that nonsense. And since then, at that point, did not believe in Christianity at all, but I definitely did believe in a God until a couple years later. I was sitting around in the grass at school. I was probably about 11 at this point, to be fair. I just played a load of Yu-Gi-Oh, played some chess. You know, I was the cool kid. And I remember watching a couple of grasshoppers, and one went into a web, and then the spider got it. And my first thought was, oh, that's not going to reproduce anymore. And then that made me start thinking, like, what is that? And then because we were learning biology and whatnot, I slowly, actually quite fastly, learned about evolution by natural selection. And the second that the cogs went into place and I understood how nature selects, just like that, just a flick, I went from a deist to an atheist, and I have been that ever since. All of a sudden, William Paley's watchmaker analogy collapsed. Until then, I was convinced, because I just saw the complexity of the fingernails, the eyes, everything about us is incredibly nuanced and complex. There's no way that this is random chance. Well, as soon as I figured out that evolution by natural selection is a thing, done.
So it sounds like largely religion didn't really play a big part in your childhood, right? I mean, what is religion like in the UK? I know the US is like notoriously extremist religious. Is it similar in the UK? Is it more relaxed, or?
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of meeting you and many others when I came over for the Atheist Experience for Faithless Forum. Texas, my gosh, you guys love some religion. That was very strange. Couldn't go and pick up petrol without I think one place, I counted them, one place had 36 crosses on the wall. I mean, talk about shoving Jesus down everyone's throat. I mean, I just want fuel, just Jesus Christ. Pretty bad. So, but as for your question, in the UK, religion is very different, and it's really odd, because you have separation of church and state. We don't. We are on paper very religious. Well, compared to the US, certainly Texas, which I understand doesn't represent the whole of the US, and compared to the East Coast in Australia, which I had the fortune of experiencing a couple of years ago, England is just the most secular place I have ever seen in my life. Not a particularly well-travelled person, but other well-travelled people do say the same. Stephen Fry, I think David Attenborough said the same. It's just an incredibly secular place. But with that said, most people do believe, not in a god, but they believe in all sorts of superstitious, irrational nonsense. Essentially, God doesn't have the monopoly like it does in, say, Eastern countries and the US, but stupid thinking does. So there's plenty of people in the UK that take homeopathy, for example, loads. There's plenty of people that are like pushing up against vaccines cause autism. NASA lies. There's loads of conspiracies. Like, I see it all around. We think we've outgrown religion. We haven't. We've outgrown it just in name. It's just changed. There's new forms of blasphemy. There's new forms of this irrationality. But overall, there is progress. What I would say is that for an atheist, it is a way better place to live.
I know that a lot of the policies in the UK are kind of informed by immigration coming in from Middle Eastern countries. Does that sound right? Like, what do you think about Islam's effect on the UK and the politics of it and things like that?
So you've asked me a political question. And that's fair. I'm totally cool with it. But one thing I've learned is, God, politics is one hell of a situation.
We don't have to get into it if you don't want to. We can.
No. I am absolutely happy to. It's always worth talking about. I'm just warning you, kind of thing. And what I would say on that front is, essentially, there is a lot of migration from Islamic countries or countries where Islam is prominent, and it has massively impacted the UK, hugely. Not so much some places, such as London, but in others, very, very much so. I used to go to Southampton University, for example, and I stayed near a place called St Mary's. St Mary's had one church, 4 mosques. Some of the bigger signs, the languages were first in Arabic, second in Polish, and third in English. So that's the kind of immigration we're talking about. And in my opinion, in my not so humble opinion, I don't think it does well for communities. It doesn't entice people to gel when there's not quotas set, etc. It's one of the reasons I voted for Brexit. I don't like open borders. But yeah, most people my age would throw me under the bus for that.
Well, here's my thing with it. I think that you and I probably disagree on Brexit, but I came from a background where if you don't conform to the belief system exactly, then you lose everything and everybody you ever cared about and loved. And I don't believe in that at all. So just for the record, I feel that shunning under any circumstances is wrong, and that we should be able to discuss anything for any reason or no reason at all. And that's why part of the reason why I invited you on here, because we do have disagreements on things, and that should be okay, right?
Absolutely, it should be okay. One thing that I very much enjoyed, for example, was recently I had a debate in Oxford against Justin Brierley. Lovely guy. It was funny to watch him be in the debate position because he's not normally so confrontational. But afterwards, I spent the entire night with Christian students, very, very religious. We completely disagreed on just about everything, but we partied till 5 a.m, had loads of wonderful conversations, and it didn't matter that we were essentially at each other's throats. We dealt with it amicably. I'm very proud of that fact. I'm proud that that can happen. What bothers me is more and more with the people that are on my side, I can't have that with, because I don't have those views. There's plenty of people that disagree with me on Brexit and can go to grass with me and have a conversation with me, respect the fact that I don't have their views. But it bothers me greatly how many people I otherwise think are very rational, decent human beings, just treat me and anyone who voted for Brexit as scum. And this is what I mean about the UK has outgrown religion only in name. I see a lot of similarities with religion and some of the people that campaign for Remain. And I think it's for 2 reasons. The first is that our generation has not been taught Enlightenment values. I'm very much adamant on that. I don't think they understand the importance of free speech. They don't understand the importance of democracy. I really do mean that as well. I think there's a serious problem there. And we can pin that on our ancestors. They should have taught us these values. The second reason is that if you get an atheist in the US, it tends to be that they are actually very secular. They understand their principles because they had to fight out of something to get there. But when you go to countries where religion doesn't have that grip, you'll find plenty of atheists that quite frankly are not rational, that are not logical. And I'm not saying that those who don't have my views are not logical. Of course they are. Remain, for example, there was a really strong case for Remain. There still is. I nearly voted for Remain. You know, there is a strong case. But what I'm saying is that there's plenty of people that I just see and I go, you haven't had to outgrown religion. You boast that you're not religious, but you are. You have the same mindset. It's not technically religion, but it's, as Sam Harris said, the problem with religion isn't the religion, it's dogma. And that is a political massive issue at the moment. You couple that with the situation on Twitter and Facebook where people have echo chambers that are just bouncing and bouncing, and people are encouraged to get rid of people who don't have their views. And Facebook's these YouTube as well, their algorithms are designed to give you content like the stuff that you're watching. It just produces this mad situation where when someone from one camp goes to talk to another, they have so much disinformation about each other, and they also have this like cult-like mentality where they cannot give any ground, and it's just a disaster. It's scary.
It's black and white polarized thinking, and that is the exact thing that you find in cults and cult-like mentalities. That's one of the defining features, is people who just cannot see it any other way, and they build up a straw man of the other side and knock it down and refuse to talk to anybody who may have a view that's even similar to this, because if they're similar to this, then they are this thing, right?
Yeah, and I think something that is worse, not worse, but it really doesn't help. If you try and sit in the middle, if you try and have a nuanced position where you say, look, let's have some kind of middle ground here, and let's try and actually really try and stillman each other's points, because you might realise that they actually do have some kind of considerations, which is what I tried to do on a video on climate change recently. I think to some extent I was successful as well, where I'd say, look, this is their position, this is how it's being represented by their opposition, it's nonsense. Here's the opposition, and here's how it's being represented by this position. It's a nonsense. How about, like, we talk about the nuances here? There isn't an easy solution. We do, to the people that are just not everyone who's against climate change wants Marxism, for example. But that is totally what's sold across the board to the other side, and they suck it up. And not everyone who is critical of all of these taxations on fuel, etc., want the world to burn. That's not what their preference is. They just think that you need an economic solution, and that they don't agree with your one. They think that something else has to take place. It's amazing that nuance is being lost, and that you have these echo chambers, and they're just... It worries me. I don't know... One, I'm not going to be diving into those politics on my channel and trying to help, because I've decided to go back to my roots, back to the philosophy, back to theology. But two, I worry about where that's going to go.
Once you lose nuance, that's really the definition of black and white thinking, isn't it? It's like you have no nuance. There's no nuance in anything anymore. And I feel like once you go down that road, it's over. You know, your critical thinking skills are just done. So.
But the other thing is because you're sounding a little bit like a middleman, like myself, right? You're gonna get accused of, you know, you might not, but these are the kind of things that do. Well, this is the thing that gets accused of people, you know. You can take any topic and people straw man the middle position. I'm not saying it's bang in the middle. I'm saying that there's nuance, and that we need to listen to each other. But that doesn't help, because that enforces the echo chambers. That says, no, we don't want that person, we don't want that person. And it's like anyone who is in the middle is very much pushed aside on one of these extremes.
Well, I'll tell you what, before we kind of get off of here, I was wondering if you can tell me one more time, where can people find your stuff? Like, you have Rationality Rules YouTube channel. What else do you have going on right now?
Sure. So most of it is being poured into Rationality Rules, as you said, the YouTube channel. I'm kind of having a reboot of a kind. I'm readdressing, I'm going back to, say, at the moment, I'm going back to Paley's watchmaker analogy, and I'm very much going to take it to grass, and because I'm now in a better position, I'm going to produce 6 or 7 videos where I can really, really delve into it. And I'm going to do that for each of the religious arguments, so I'm switching myself up on that front. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, sometimes I'm on Instagram, though I must say most of those is my girlfriend taking photos and uploading them. But outside of that, they're the best places to find me, really.
Very cool. One more thing. You said you were working on a card game recently, weren't you? That's released, hasn't it?
Yeah, so basically that's in the process of being printed right now. So in about 3 days' time, I will get a full, a prototype version of the Kickstarter exclusive and the retail. And I'll be able to, I'll make a video and show everyone what it looks like. And then as soon as that's signed off, everyone who supported on Kickstarter and on Backer Kit, which was basically pre-orders, they will get all of their deliveries. And then shortly afterwards, I should be able to actually sell the game. I should be able to say to people, right, game's done, people have supported it, it's happened, it's now available.
That's exciting, man. I can't wait to take a look at it myself. So I'm going to put a link to your channel in the description. Any other things that you want me to put down there, I can put down there. So anybody watching, take a look at that. Check out Steve's channel, Rationality Rules. Definitely worth the watch. I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. We'll talk again one of these days, right?
Absolutely, and it's my honor. I'm very much a fan of what you're doing, so please do continue.
If you like what I do and you want to make sure I can continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, you can support me on Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring. I'm trying to make a shirt design for every cult I've covered. I haven't gotten every one, but I'm working on it. So check it out and see if your cult is up there. Second, you can support me by checking out my game shop. I sell controller, cartridge, and game box stands for every system from the original Nintendo and Sega Game Gear to the Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. So give that a look too. And finally, if you want to support me in some way other than monetarily, you can check out my other YouTube channels. I have a retro game channel where I answer questions like, why does Shy Guy have a mask? And why are CRT TVs the best way to play retro games? I also have the podcast where I talk about stuff I don't feel I can say on a monetized channel. And finally, I have my main channel where I talk about cults. I wish I didn't have to worry about dancing around subjects carefully in the first place, but I chose to do this as a full-time job, so unfortunately I rely on YouTube's AdSense and on the support of patrons to continue doing the work I do. Anyways, check me out in all those places if you haven't already. Thanks for listening, guys.